The slip stitch. The slip stitch is hopefully an invisible stitch that is used to join a fold with a single layer of fabric or two folded edges of fabric together. It is created using a single knotted thread, so only one end of my thread is engaged in the knot. As I said, this is a stitch performed on a folded edge, so I have got a double fold going on in my sample. I have a small fold at one long edge and then a deeper fold. This is to represent a hem in a garment or the edge of a facing or inside of a lining that we might be slip stitching. All right, again, this is worked from dominant hand side across to the other side, and this one is more complicated than the other two we've done. I want you to start by putting the needle into the fold, all right? So the small fold. I hope you can see that on the camera. I'll bring it a little bit closer here. So my needle is coming out of that fold right on the edge. I pull it up so that my knot is now inside that fold. Now, on the single layer of fabric directly above where my thread is coming out, I'm going to take the tiniest of stitches. Tiny little stitch with my needle pointing to the left since I'm right-handed. Pull this stitch up. Then take my needle and place it back in the fold right next to where it came out previously. Then I'm going to slip my needle along the inside of that fold. Think of this as tunneling, right? Slip it along and bring it back out a small stitch length away and pull that stitch up. All right, I'll repeat this a couple of times. Right above where the thread is coming out, take a tiny stitch, pull that stitch up. Place the needle back in the fold, slip it along inside the fold, bring it out a stitch length away. Now, if I were using thread that were the same color as my fabric, this would be virtually invisible. But, of course, I'm using contrasting thread so that you and I can both see it for the sake of learning the skill. Okay. Take a tiny stitch and slip back into the fold, slip along, take a stitch. Now, some people are able to get good enough at this that you can go directly from your stitch into the fold and slip along. I find that a little more challenging, and in fact it takes me a little bit longer than just doing each stitch individually. I feel like I am more efficient by taking my tiny little stitch, pulling that up, and going back into the fabric. I have to work a little too hard at it the other way. Some people, however, are faster at it. So if you get comfortable and you want to try going directly from, I'll demonstrate that again, going directly from your stitch above here into the fold, you're welcome to try that and see if you can get good results. Okay, it leaves a little bit more of the thread visible. So the slip stitch on the inside, which is this is representing the inside of the garment. On the inside, you should see just tiny little threads connecting your fold with your single layer of fabric. On the outside, what would be visible to the viewer, you should see only little pinprick size stitches. And again, if I were using thread that matched, it would blend very well. All right, so of course, you will continue across your entire sample, getting that all in place. Now let's imagine that I have done that and it's time to tie off. All right, so again, turn your sample so that it is perpendicular to your lap. Take one final tiny stitch of your single layer of fabric and catch the fold folded edge that you've been working on, pull that stitch all the way up, take one more little tiny stitch. Before you pull that stitch all the way up, pass your needle through the loop and pull that up nice and tight. Now that can be trimmed. One final note on the slip stitch, and that is that it would be very helpful if you were to secure this with some pins, some straight pins, so that your hem area, your fold, does not creep around on you while you're working. I gave it a good finger press before I began, but certainly if I were to do the complete sample or a whole garment, I would want pins to hold everything together. All right, that is the slip stitch.